into law an act making appropriations for the fiscal year 2023 to provide for supplementing certain existing appropriations and for other certain activities and projects. It also included an extension until March 31st of 2025 of remote meeting provisions. This November 19th Long Range Financial Planning Committee, I'm blending all my meetings together, will be conducted via remote participation by the committee. And we will record this on Zoom. And so with that, let's just jump into the chair's update. Let's see. Welcome, Melissa, and welcome, Lemma. Just want to give a quick update with respect to where we are on Fire Station 1, so that this group is aware. We went before the planning board several times, the most recent one at November 19th, and the project received the EIDR via unanimous vote from the planning board. We then went before the Zoning Board of Appeals for the variances required last week and received all of those. And so our next event will be FinCom on December 4th, a public information session on the 5th. We go before CONCOM on the 11th, and then I don't believe there's any further continuation at this time with the ZBA, but there was continued to that point in the event there was anything needed to be addressed with stormwater management coming out of the CONCOM meeting. Is that accurate, Pat, Chris?
Yeah, yes.
Excellent. So that's really sort of the big update that I have with respect to sort of large projects. We're still awaiting the first pass at data from our facility studies on both the school and municipal side. I believe the schools will be receiving theirs very soon. And then we are due to get ours on the municipal side in January. So that really brings us to what our sort of research work streams have been over the past several weeks since we sort of divvied up the work. And I believe step one was Nancy James with respect to the communities themselves that have considered a transfer. And before I go to Nancy, I see that Julie has a question.
Can I, sorry to back us up, but Fire Station 1, I'm hearing a lot of concerns from neighbors about the design and kind of losing, as I look at the design, the fire station will no longer have access to the back of the station through that driveway that's available now on the left between the fire station and Folsom.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
and really the only use for that is for the firefighters themselves to access the driveway. The equipment, the apparatus itself, when it needs to be serviced, it can't make that turn down the driveway. The turning radius is far too tight in terms of pulling out on a high street and making that turn. So they currently go down Windsor and down Hillcrest as they have for, a long, long time. So the only, issue with taking the driveway out would be that the firefighters themselves would need to use the Windsor Hillcrest. And many of them do currently because most of them are probably coming from west of Westwood and are coming down 109 that way. And that becomes the first point of entrance to get to the back parking lot. So relatively nominal increase in traffic from my perspective.
Julia, what are you hearing?
I think people are very concerned with, and I'm kind of fact checking because I'm working off of what people have said and what I've seen, is the intent that the fire station will now have kind of a revenue stream of repairing capital from trucks from other towns? Okay.
No.
So that was one thing I was understanding, that there'd be more than Westwood trucks accessing the backside of fire station. So that's not true. We're not hiring someone to repair. Okay.
We have our own mechanic who repairs our equipment on site. And that is a significant benefit to the critical mission readiness of the fire department. You know, if there's a truck that is being worked on and, you know, can be pulled back into service right there from on site, makes a huge difference in a
Okay.
response time. So all of that is why Chief London and the department feel very, very strongly. Um,
Okay.
If
So
I could just add though, just for where people may be misunderstanding,
yeah.
that mechanic that Rob refers to also works for Needham.
Okay,
In
maybe
Needham.
that's some of the communication. That's what I'm just trying to get clear.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, people are concerned, as they should, about safety, about size and whatnot. So I'm just trying to understand. Okay. And then has anyone done kind of a study on the volume, you know, of how many firefighters or personnel parked there now? And I mean, going forward, everyone has to use that road, right? The driveway's gone, which I see, I gotta be honest, a bit of a design flaw. Because now you've, you know, it'd be like me building a house and not having a driveway to get in my own home, other than going through a neighbor's backyard. So I do think, you know, I understand the need for bigger, but I just don't know why we couldn't have worked within the footprint we have. That being said, I'm not an architect.
Oh, can I give, I'm on the working group, so
Yeah,
if I can just
please.
give the
Yeah,
highlights. The big issue in the design starts with the apparatus bays that are needed. And in order to get 5 garage bays, not 4 like we have now, we needed to go wider because they all need access to High Street. The other thing you may be hearing from the neighborhood, but an element of the design is the maintenance bay that Rob
yeah,
was referring to, which exists today, but we can't use within the station on the backside because we have steel supports to hold the floor up in the apparatus bays, but it is in the back underneath. So the trucks today go through the neighborhood to get to the maintenance bay today, and they will in the future. So the design, it's not a flaw, it's a necessity, needed to go wider. And then the rest of the building got designed after the garage bays are laid out, and it's upstairs and then half of ground level in the back. I'll call it basement. It's for half of the building. So
right.
it evolves out of what's needed for the programming. Hard to retain a driveway under those circumstances, but there are numbers of vehicles from the police staff, I mean, the fire staff, wrong building, fire staff, and it's 7 to 10 extra cars a couple times a day. The volume impact is nominal, but it is an increase.
Yeah, yeah. I can see being concerned as a neighbor. So I'm just trying to understand as more and more people talk about it. So that's helpful. So one last question. Sorry, Rob. So there's no ability to work with Folsom on a shared driveway on that side? Nancy?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Can I
That was
just
helpful.
say something? I'm glad you asked that question. But I do want to say that all these meetings are all taped, and so wasn't able to attend one live. So some of the stuff that you're asking, I went back and watched, and I hear the neighbors' concerns. I think part of it is that they have really lived a charmed life back there with not a lot of traffic, and that's wonderful. But if someone would you tell me we have a better, safer fire station, but it might mean 7 more cars a day coming through, I would say that's a good sacrifice. That neighborhood probably has the least amount of traffic than any neighborhood in Westwood. And so I think for the greater good, it works. But all of these, these questions that you're asking, which I think are valid, come from sort of this is what I heard, and people are hearing half truths. So I'm glad you're asking, and I'm glad they're getting to
Yeah.
answer it, because I mean I deal with if someone told me 7 more cars, it would be nothing to me where I live. And I think the neighbors came up with some really good questions about safety, and the answers that I heard at I think it was the select board meeting were great. I mean, they really are accommodating. So, and it gave me some ideas for my own neighborhood.
Yeah, and
So
I think that, this is all stuff that will continue to be vetted during, public information sessions, et cetera. So, there's ample opportunity to hear more about the project, the need, the design, et cetera, as well as hear and answer any questions. So, we have many forums coming up that those questions can be asked. I just
And
want to
I'll
make.
put myself out there as available to talk to
Yeah,
anybody.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I,
and
from
Follow.
FinCom and others, it goes through due process, so I understand and I respect that. I just
Yep.
wanted to touch base since we had talked about it before.
yes, I'm also
Gotcha.
mindful of everybody's time on this call with the mission and charge that we have to help potentially find alternative revenue sources. So with that,
Well, a little bit of semantics
Nancy
first,
James.
Rob.
Hold on a
Rob, I'm
second.
sorry.
Nancy James has her hand up, and then I'll go to you.
Just
Sorry.
a very quick question. I know we want to move on from this, but is there, and apologies if it exists already, is there a frequently asked questions document out there? Because I do understand neighbors' concerns and I felt like this happened with Pine Hill, that people misunderstand or misinterpret, a design or question the design, but things are designed for a reason.
Yes,
Right,
there are,
so-
Nancy, on the website, but we're also going to continue to work on that.
Okay,
So if you go through the
Pretty
town,
generic.
fire station pops up and there are available.
that's where it is.
responses.
Okay, great.
And as I think somebody said earlier, there are many public meetings that have already taken place where the design itself was reviewed extensively. I can tell you that I've sat through no shortage of 11 hours of meetings with the planning board answering all kinds of questions related to design. So not that I think anybody's going to want to sit through 11 hours worth of meetings, but that's just, that's the reality of, we have gone through that due process, Julie, and
Mhm.
answered a lot
Yeah,
of
I
questions.
understand that.
So-
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
and
All
that's what prompted my, is there something out there that's a succinct, and that FAQ document should hopefully cover it. It's just, I think the challenge is always, how do we best get it into the hands of people in the town,
Correct.
right, to review and sort of settle things down.
And just for
Well-
everyone's benefit, to date, we have 23 questions under the FAQ for FS1 on the website.
All right, so now we'll turn Nancy James. You
Yeah,
were.
I'm sorry before we do this,
Oh, I'm
we
sorry,
have to
Stephanie.
approve minutes. We
Yeah.
do have to approve minutes. I just need to make sure we
Oh,
do that.
very good. Very
Yeah.
good. Thank you, keeping us honest and making sure we get that done before we go on to sort of agenda. So if you would, Laura, please take us through which meeting minutes we are going to be reviewing and approving and revoting. I know there was something that needed to be revoted as well. So if you would please take us in that order and along with who can vote on which.
Sure. So let's start with the August minutes. They're a little simpler. We don't have to reconsider those. We can just vote those straight. So the only people who weren't at that meeting were Maya and Melissa, so everybody else can vote. So can we have a motion to approve those minutes?
so moved.
Second,
One sec, we'll do a roll call vote. All right, Julie,
I approve.
Maya,
She-
Oh, no.
Abstain.
I'm messing my
Thank
own
you.
rules up there, sorry. Nancy Hyde.
Nancy, you're on mute. Nancy Hyde. you're
Now
on
I'll
mute.
say yes.
Okay, Nancy James,
aye.
Paula,
Aye.
and Phil,
Yes.
great, and Rob.
Aye.
Perfect, okay. Pat, I might need a little help with this next one. So,
So, would you like me to take it?
oh, could you? Sure.
So, when we initially voted the January minutes, I think it was in August, a couple people were not on the meeting but voted. So we need a motion to reconsider those minutes, and then we need a motion to accept the minutes as written, and then take a roll call vote from there.
So
Pat,
I
who
move,
wasn't on so that we know?
It was,
who voted?
I
Laura's gonna go through who can vote on this.
I-
Yes.
Yeah, It's a
Now,
small,
everybody can vote on the reconsideration motion,
Yeah.
Pat, just so I'm
Yes.
clear? Okay,
And is it
Did
January 24th, Pat?
I believe it is.
Yeah,
Okay, I move we reconsider the.
I think it's January 23rd.
January 23rd.
Thank you, Melissa.
I'm
I
sorry.
couldn't get it to pop up fast enough.
Me
I
neither.
move we reconsider our vote on the minutes from January 23rd, 2024.
Second,
Second.
great,
we have a motion and a second.
okay,
Laura, if you would call the roll.
absolutely. So we have Julie,
Aye.
Maya,
Yes.
Melissa,
Aye.
Nancy Hyde,
Aye.
Nancy James,
Aye.
Paula,
Aye.
Bill,
You're on mute, Phil.
Aye.
and Rob.
Aye.
Great. Okay. So for these January minutes, we have Phil wasn't there, Paul isn't here today and wasn't there, and Ellen. So really, it's everybody who's present except Phil, because the other people who weren't there aren't here. So can we get a motion to approve the January 23rd minutes?
So moved.
Great. And a second?
Second.
Seconded.
Okay. Great. Second, and then we'll just do a quick roll call and we'll be done. Julie,
Aye.
Maya,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Hyde,
Oh,
sorry, and Nancy James. It doesn't matter. Both Nancy's.
Aye.
aye.
Thanks. Paula
Aye.
and Rob.
Aye.
Great, we're done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you, Stephanie, for keeping us honest. So work stream 1 was looking at a list of communities that has considered any type of transfer fee related to real estate. And I know, Nancy, you were putting together that list with some help from Stephanie. So if you could bring us up to speed.
Sure. So this, actually just read you the list here of who I have on the, or I'm sorry, who has currently passed. So Boston, Somerville, Nantucket, Provincetown, Concord, Cambridge, Arlington, Brookline, Chatham, Truro, and Wellfleet. So there's a standard tax rate of $4.56 per $1,000 of the sale price. So I thought it would be beneficial, and I don't have that data yet, but to really walk through, and I can send a summary after this meeting or send it within the next week or so of really what the process was in each community as far as getting that approved.
So
Any potential roadblocks. Yes.
that rate of $4 and change that you just said per thousand, is this a local adoption of something at the state level? Like what?
It's
I'm
a state,
surprised that-
so it's a state level, and I'll dig into each town and see if they stayed with the $4.56
Got it.
rate.
And as we look at that list, and since it's the home rule, I guess adoption, is that right? Am I saying that correctly?
They haven't passed it.
So is it tied to anything specific? I know in some places it's been earmarked for housing production or maybe affordable housing production. I'm not 100% sure. Do we have that line of sight yet into the communities that have something?
We do not, but that seemed to be the driving force was affordable housing.
Okay. And
But I
that's
can go community by community if that would be helpful.
and that's just that's the list of communities that have passed something.
Yes, there were 2, I stand corrected. There were 2 that we're considering. And I think when we first took a look at it, we sort of felt like it was communities with vacation homes. I remember the last time we talked was Provincetown and Chatham and Truro. So Truro has filed a home rule petition, as has Wellfleet. Theirs have not passed yet. And that's why I want to take that deeper dive into each community. What have been, either stumbling blocks or, what did they choose to allocate that for? Were they all affordable housing
Right, right.
generated?
I know that then we were going to, there's a work stream related to sort of real estate, but that needed to be informed by this list, so that will follow.
Mhm.
Nancy Hyde, I believe you were going to be working with Cheryl on our new assessor on sort of real estate sales over, say, the past 10 years, to see what various levels of transfer fees might have generated into a fund like this. I know that Cheryl is new and she just gave us our tax shift presentation last night. So have you been able to get with her yet?
No, she had a buffer zone around her, protecting her so she could get the necessary tax shift work done. So Stephanie and I have agreed that we're going to wait so she could get that done, and she did so very successfully, and you all approved it last night at the select board level. So I'll be following up with her. It's a very straightforward analysis, taking the sales history and looking at it with the calculation of had there been a surcharge, or however we want to refer to it, on transactions, what revenue would have been generated, and why do we see spikes or whatever? Because certainly if we look back at 22, 21 into 22, we're going to have a high volume of sales in town that reflect the market dynamics. But we'll probably look for what becomes more of an average.
Yeah, I would think so. And Julie, I know you were going to do sort of similar on the commercial side of things, and I would imagine you're running up against the same resource constraint in terms of availability.
No, I got information from Cheryl.
Oh,
So
great.
I can share. Yep, Cheryl pulled together for me. Hold on, let me open my spreadsheet. Sales, commercial sales back to 2010. So starting April of 2010 was the best she could get, which I think is great. The total commercial sales for up through present, let me look at the latest, through August 2024, we had 951, almost 952 million in sales, commercial sales. So I just quickly looked at a 1% surcharge and a 0.5% surcharge, because that's what I recalled from the last meeting was the range. So if we were to get, 1%, we'd get $9.5 million in tax revenue, and half of that, 4.8, 4.75 million, if we did a 0.5% tax rate on that.
Right. And that's over a 14, 15-year period.
Yeah.
And so, one of the questions from sort of the DOR standpoint, I guess for Stephanie would be, will we be able to, if we were to propose such, and if we were able to pass such, would we be able to accrue that into a fund that would be earmarked for capital projects like this?
Yeah. Just one other note, Rob, that's about 100 transactions. There were some groupings of sales with university swaps, but, just to give a sense of volume over
Yep.
the 14 years, about 100.
And it's probably very sporadic in terms of the sales themselves, right? I would imagine there was a big chunk during the university station time period, but since then, not nearly the volume. And so, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have Everett Street creeping up as that gets developed, some of the more recent transactions. Dana-Farber, a few more at University Station, Wilson Way, Southwest Park. So, I don't know the timing on these decisions, but University and Washington Street, I think probably around the time of Islington development.
Yep.
Definitely those trends.
And last night we noted in the tax classification hearing that in 2023, we didn't have commercial transactions of any note. So what happened with the University Avenue development and everything is not something that would be readily repeated.
Right. Yep.
But it's just,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what we're looking for kind of an N at the end of the day, a number,
Yep.
what we need, but 9.5 million or whatever it sounded.
It's sort of proof, it's proof of concept that if we were to
Yep.
have something like this, even though there are infrequent commercial sales, they could be substantive in terms of their contribution to something like this. So thank you. That's helpful information to have. I believe, let's see, Paula, you were also interested in exploring other things that other communities have done from a revenue generation standpoint. So I'm just curious if you've been able to cobble together any thoughts from your research.
So yeah, it was a rabbit hole to say the least of what people are doing, what towns are doing. And and it's really like across the country, although different states have different laws on what they can do. So I was trying to stick just to Massachusetts. But some of the things that have been tossed around, and some of them are punitive if you have money. If you spend X amount of money over, for a car, then you pay even more. There's the typical things like gas, gas tax, cigarettes, weed is a big one. Sugary drinks is another one that they're putting out there. I've been trying to find out and work. So I was trying to see, okay, should I go to towns and ask? And I started to do that, but it's hard to get the right person. So then I started to look at industries. So that's where I am right now. Like, for example, Mass Food Association they will probably know which towns charge a
Excise tax.
a tax for, say, getting a bag. The revenue goes back. These things, though, it's not as easy as just saying that, because you're going to tick off the people who are getting taxed for it, and also you put a burden on the stores if they have to charge more money and they're getting some feedback, some flack. So, and sometimes, like in a town like Westwood, if we charged more for gas and we have 3 gas stations, somebody's just going to go to another gas station. So sometimes it shoots. What I'm hearing back is that can really shoot you in the foot. You lose one way. Is it really worth it to do it? So I will continue to explore these things, but I will say that people get very creative, and somebody's never happy when they do it. So
Yes, Julia, I see you have a question.
So thanks, Paula. I think it's great to benchmark, and I think we should continue to. But when I think of the towns that Nancy listed, most of them, other than Concord, seem to be, cities and towns that have a lot of rentals, right? So if you're buying a property to then rent it out, if you follow the dollar, those transactions are more business-like, right? They're not always people that are living in the home. So is there kind of, as we think about where we have growth, where do we want to tack on? I don't know that bubblegum and candy is going to be ultimately, where we want to plant a flag. But if we think a little bit more strategically, if we do expect a turnover in commercial real estate, like what are we skating to here?
I think right now we're exploring.
I agree, but it would
various
be
options,
interesting
right?
to think,
Yeah.
do we have any objective thought on where we see the potential based on where we're heading as a town?
I think the place that would have the greatest yield would be, given the average number of annual residential transactions, would be
Yeah.
on residential property. I think you raised the question, shouldn't we also look at what it would be if we included commercial? And I think that is, as you have just highlighted, that
Right.
it could yield, depending on the volume of transactions on the commercial side of things. So I think ultimately that's where we probably are exploring. as the best, most reliable source of funds to build towards some type of capital account. But that's, we're early in our research at this point.
Right. I just didn't know if there are other thoughts just based on kind of where we're going.
I mean, the
from a
whole
strategic-
cross-border thing that Paula brought up, yes, it is absolutely true. If somebody has, a higher excise tax and it's an easy, go across the border, that's why state line liquor stores exist in New Hampshire, right? I mean, so I would say that those are all considerations. I don't know that we're looking at any type of excise tax based on personal consumption. But that, when we're looking at what various options might exist, that certainly is one that is others have availed themselves of. So certainly good to know. And then we get to make our own deliberation and considered thought and recommendation to the select board. So, is there any other work stream, Laura, that I have missed asking for an update on? I'm sorry, I'm on my work computer, so I don't have my last notes available.
I don't think so. I think we covered.
Okay. All right. With that, I think that Paul had been the one that was going to work on sort of impact on real estate where the towns are that have looked at this. Nancy,
And I talked to Paul. I know he was working on that last week. So I'm sure he'll have a report next time.
yeah, he had an important conflict that he had to attend to this morning, so I respect that, and we'll get an update from him at our next meeting. Nancy James, just a quick question for you. As you looked at the list, were there other communities that had considered and maybe put forward a ballot initiative that did not pass? I'm curious because I think one of the things that we were also interested in is where it failed, why it failed. What was,
So I don't have that, but I can send that as a follow-up.
okay. Oh, I think that's something we can look to a future meeting for.
Sure.
So, okay. Is there any new business, any additional topic that we could not have anticipated for this group? I don't think so. All right. Well, I think I would love to be able to give everybody back the gift of time. So with that.
Oh, no, Rob, don't do it.
Well, Rob, I wonder is there any estimate of a number we'd like to get to with this potential? Like if we're thinking supporting housing, again, maybe just a swag of, are we talking, we're looking for $2 million, $20 million, $200,000? Do you know what I mean?
I think, the way I think about this, Julie, is we have revenue challenges, right?
Right.
Prop 2.5 is something that works great when you have a 40-year run of low inflation. However, when you're faced with the type of inflation we had been faced with for the last several years, that compounds the challenge of it, right? Because if we've got to keep the levy to 2.5 plus new growth, and we don't have another untapped new growth source like University Station was back when it really came on in 2015, you then have the pressure of the people who provide the services for the public good, your teachers, your firefighters, your public works, your firefighters, they're struggling to keep up with inflation. And so there's pressure then to put, to help them get some relief. And yet you're bound by Prop 2.5, right? And then compounding that further, inflation affects things like the fixed cost slice of the pie, which Stephanie did a fantastic job reviewing last night in the select board meeting. So if you get a chance to watch that, but when you've got a 19%, 20% slice of the pie that's going up 7.5%, 10%, that puts all that much more pressure on the 80% left of the pie That's the people delivering those services at a time when they really need some relief. So it just, to me, it highlights the challenges of Prop 2.5.
Mm.
And so if you think about this as how then, when we brought University Station online, we were able to build the police station and FS2 without an exempt debt override, right? So we had the excess capacity to address some of our infrastructure needs. As eventually we will see from the facility studies, we're going to have additional future needs that are not going to be inexpensive. And so the question becomes, how might we do something so that it's not entirely on the backs of the resident taxpayer to be able to build a buffer to be able to absorb capital projects because we've built this fund over time. That's sort of the big picture idea with what we might be able to do with it. So I can't say that there's a number involved because the number is going to fluctuate depending on what types of important capital projects come forward, whether it's, a school like the Pine Hill, or whether it's, a fire station, or, something down the line for the COA, whatever it may be, a town hall. There's all kinds of things that it could be allocated to. And what we're trying to do is create a source of funds to be able to absorb that debt payment and help defray how much it is on the resident taxpayer. That's sort of the big picture in my mind. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I understand it. I'm just thinking a little bit more kind of, in my day job, I think would have a business target. And I understand your, of what do we really want to get to within a range of floor or ceiling of a dollar amount that seems right. So then
Yeah,
and
I
maybe
think
we
if,
pivot and go a different direction, but it would just help kind of size what we're going for.
right. I mean,
You know?
if you're looking at, let's use the data that you provided on the commercial side, right? So let's just keep the math easy. You've got $10 million that it sort of would have generated at a 1% number over a 15-year period, right? So,
Yep.
it's less than $1 million a year that it might add to a fund like that. But when we get the data on residential sales, that will provide us a much greater understanding of, okay, if we were to take a 0.5% or a 1% or a 1.5%, what those increments might look like in terms of what that could yield as you look at average residential home sales over time. And then now all of a sudden you've got a number to work with on sort of Stephanie's side of the ledger to say, okay, if we had this, that would help reduce the amount that would have to be gone out and asked for as an exempt debt borrowing, right? So and if you think about the people who are impacted the most, right? The people who can least afford it are the folks who've been in their homes the longest and are now on fixed incomes. And if you made this part of a transfer fee when the property sold, it's almost like the new homeowner buying into the community for the long haul because they're going to be the ones that reap the benefit of any major infrastructure investments going forward. So it could help provide some additional relief. And, but again, that's why we want to do all this research and understand what the options might be before we even consider making a recommendation to the select board. Any other questions? Is that a good answer to your, or at least a thoughtful answer to your question, Julie?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm taking a lot of airtime this morning.
That's
Had
all
an
right.
extra cup of coffee.
I'm glad I had mine so I can answer some. Any other questions from anyone? All right. If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Laura, could you do the roll, please?
Sure.
Well-
Julie,
Aye.
Maya,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Nancy Hyde,
Aye.
Nancy James,
Aye.
Paula,
Aye.
and Rob.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, for your time this morning and the very thoughtful discussion. We'll have more updates at our next meeting and
Happy Thanksgiving.
continue to happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving all.
Thank
Happy
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.